Hi guys, I'm glad to see you again. Ramsey here, welcome back to my channel. I have been thinking and I've noticed that with a lot of the content on my channel and with a lot of automation channels as well out there, we dive right into the automation. And the problem with that is that it doesn't mean anything to anyone with an actual practical problem. It's just a buzzword. It's automation and AI. So today I decided, and I'm going to do this actually going forward, to take a slightly different approach where I'm looking at a pain point that a regular business might face. And then we figure out how to solve that pain point in a way that can be done manually, first of all, because, automation hasn't always existed. Most of these things have been done manually. And then after figuring out how to systematize it manually, we then proceed to automate it. And that's where we think of all the different tools that we could automate it with. On this channel, we're always talking about n8n, just probably because it's just one of the most robust automation tools out there. But you could do it anywhere. You could do it in code, you could do it in Relevance AI, you could even do it on OpenAI's new agent builder, which is pretty cool, by the way. But just to start us off in a very simple place, we're going to start with client onboarding. So it's a very simple scenario. You are, say, a consultation business, or you actually do development work or something like that. And every time a new client comes on, you're supposed to be excited because it's money in the bank. But you get this sinking feeling in your stomach because you're like, oh my God, this is going to be hours of manual work. Well, maybe 1 hour, but still manual work. And you maybe don't have a system on how to do that, or maybe you do, but it's still a lot of steps. And you'd like to know how you can speed up the process and standardize it, so you're doing it for all of your clients to make things easier. So today we're going to go through client onboarding and look at how you can systematize it. And then from there, look at how you may be able to automate that. I did a blank slate don't worry about this. This is just a TL draw I did to kind of like flesh it out. But it initially started with this simple checklist or the simple to-do list on blankslate.io, which is a pretty cool app, by the way. You should check it out. It's really nice for, quick, rough note-taking by typing, if you don't like the hands thing. But it's pretty cool. It's like, okay, so let's say you've got like a client coming in. Actually, the first step here should be that you have a client that's, client signs contract. And you're like, what happens after the client signs the contract, right? Maybe you want them to fill in a simple form because you want to get some of their details. Presumably you didn't get them before and now you want to get them. That's okay. But let's say you want them to fill in a simple form, and then you're going to take the information from this form and then use it to prepare something and gently guide the client through the onboarding process. Any decent business is going to have an onboarding process. The client needs to know what the next steps are. They need to know who to contact in case of anything. They need to know where to find progress and stuff, what calendar links to click on. So I kind of came up with a simple checklist here. So when the client signs contract, let's say you're going to set up assets. In this place, I mean like Google Drive folders and files or whatever, that you use to manage stuff, which is perfectly fine. You could have a more complicated system, and that's okay. The point here is to show you how you can go from a simple idea or a pain point to fleshing it out into an automation that you can then apply to your business. And then let's say you use maybe a project management tool like ClickUp or Asana. Is it Asana or Asana? Is it Asana or Asana? Or Trello, right? And then, so you need to set up a project. You have a team and you need to set up the project. Maybe you have a template that your team follows for all clients, right? And then after that, you need to draft and send a welcome email. And then you need to notify your team on Slack that we have a new client on board and this is what we need to do, right? It's very simple. It's 5 steps, 4 if you leave out the client actually signing the contract and filling in the form. right? And then you need to figure out how to automate it. So there's like, it's just 5 or 4 steps, but it's got quite a bit of manual work. And then it's got the actual data involved and all of that. And you're like, how can I automate this so it happens automatically for every client? Well, you need to think of it in steps. So the first step is to break down the problem, which I've kind of already done for you here by writing out the steps. But this is a kind of thinking, a kind of like system of thinking that you would want to carry into whatever kind of business problem you face, for that matter, whatever kind of life problem you face. Any problem that looks really complex and overwhelming on the surface can be broken down into a set of smaller problems that, you know, are simpler to solve compared to the bigger problem. Then you solve those one by one, and then you put them together and you've solved the bigger problem. And if those individual steps look too complex, then you break them down into individual steps and so on. I like to call it the system, then automate principle. First, build the system, work out the process, and then automate it. It's much easier. And this is a problem many businesses face. They don't have the organization, they don't have the system, but they want to jump right into automation. When first what they need to do is to build the system and the data around it, and then automate from there. So we're starting here, and I did a thing. I prepared a TL draw, as you already know, trying to take each of the steps from the blank slate and then, you know, flesh them out from which we can figure out how to automate. And I did choose some tools, some platforms for doing this, completely arbitrary. Well, not really. They're not entirely arbitrary. I just went for tools that were really easy to set up in the moment. But they are practical things that you can use in your business. You can use these tools in your business if you want. You can use other tools. The concept is the same. Maybe the API access or the way data is handled might change slightly, but the idea, the core concept of systematizing and then automating, you know, integration, all that is the same. So we start with the client signing a contract and submitting an intake form. And maybe you might want to capture some data in that intake form. So for simplicity, I say maybe we just want the name of the client, the email of the client, the name of the company, and the type of project. Very simple, right? And then you're like, okay, let's initiate the onboarding here. So we're going to create a folder for the client. You could create this folder anywhere. You could create it in Dropbox. You could create it in some, you know, project management software. You could create it in Google Drive. I went for Google Drive because it was simpler, but it doesn't really matter. Anything works here. And, you know, you need maybe some kind of naming convention. So maybe the name of the company and the type of project. That's what I went with here. And then you can create some subfolders within that folder. Maybe contracts that the client needs to sign, invoices, where the invoices go that the client needs to pay, deliverables. What are you actually giving the client? Are they here for some social media management stuff where maybe you're sending them posts? Are they here for an automation work where you're sending them workflows, or you are marking down what workflows you've built for them? Etc., etc. And then you need maybe client assets. They might provide you with some stuff, images, documents, whatever, and you need to put that in a special place. It can be any kind of folder structure you want. I just picked a simple one, okay? Side note, I had Gemini help me prepare some of these ideas, right? Like, what kind of random folder structure can I pick? But yeah, anyway. So that's one way you can use AI. You can use it to help you come up with content ideas and then build up from there. And then maybe you create a project in Trello or Asana. So a new project board is created from a template. You need a template because maybe if you have many clients doing the same kind of project, or you have like a finite number of projects and all of your clients are going to fit into one of those project types, then you need templates for each project type. And then every time you get a new client, you create a new project management board based on the appropriate template, right? And then the client's info is added to the project description, or not, whatever you want. Again, it's just the core idea. You can flesh this out and build on it as much as you want. And then we have a personalized welcome email. It's very good. It's good practice. It's professional. And when a client signs up, you need to send them a welcome email. It's just polite. Hey, you know, thanks for working with us, and here's some info you might need. This is where you might access stuff. This is who you might contact. This is how you might book an appointment, etc., etc. So, the email will include a link to the new shared Google Drive folder in this scenario, a summary of next steps, and a booking link for the kickoff call. And then you notify your team. You have a team of developers, salespeople, admin people, and you tell them, hey, like in this case, I chose Slack, but it could be really anything. So in Slack, maybe you have a new clients channel, and you're like, we have a new client on board. These are their details. This is who they're assigned to, etc. And just like that, you have a simple client onboarding process. So you can think of it as a welcome mat that you hand out to the client, and then they get into your process, right? Now, the question is, how might you do this? Well, if you're doing it manually, for example, if you're creating a client folder, you might go to Google Drive, and you might have like a folder like this, which is clients, and you might like have like a particular company folder that you can create manually. I mean, you just go to the new button and say new folder, and then name it. And then when you create the folder, you can create individual subfolders like contracts, invoices, deliverables, client assets. And that will be the part where you're creating the client assets, right? And then what would you do next? You would create a project in Trello or Asana. You might come to, where's Trello? So, we have Trello here. Don't worry about this. I was just fooling around, and we'll get to this. But like, you might have Trello, it's very easy to sign up to Trello. Just go to trello.com, sign up, and you get like, once you go to your dashboard, you have something like this, and you have your workspaces, and maybe you have like a template like the client consultation board. Actually, I have the simple project board here. But the idea is, if you want to start with a template, you can always search for a template. So you can go to templates and search for a template, and then you can build off of that. For this particular one, I just picked the simple project board template. It's very simple, as is implied in the name. So you have the simple project board where you have like brainstorming. These are called cards, right? So the idea is that a card has your to-dos, and then you can like move things there, because it's like time-based. I think they call them Kanban boards. So when something is brainstorming, it's in that particular card. Then it moves on as a to-do. It becomes a list of to-dos. Then if something is in progress, it moves to a different card, and then if it's done, so you can track what's still in progress and what's already done. Very, very simple, right? I'm going to say simple a lot of times. If you drink every time you hear me saying simple, I don't think you'll make it to the end of this video. And then you have sending a personalized welcome email. In that case, you're just going to open Gmail and type in an email. I'm not going to open my Gmail. I'll wait for that reveal at the end when I show you the actual welcome email. But you type in the email and you have some stuff. You may need to share a calendar link, in which case you could go to Calendly. For this one, I would say I just choose Google Calendar, and maybe you go to create. So this is calendar.google.com, assuming you have like a Google account. And then you create, and then you can say that I want to create an appointment schedule. It's usually there in the menu. You can add a title for the appointment schedule. You can choose the duration. You can look at your availability. And you can even look at like things like co-hosts, or what to do with booked appointments, etc. And if you click on next, you can see what location to choose, what kind of photo and name to have on the booking page, what kind of form to have, what kind of info you would want in the form. In this case, just like taking a first name, a surname, and an email address, and so on and so forth. I have already created a booking form in this case. This would be it, I think. So I'm not going to create a new one, but just to show you the idea, by clicking on the preview, this is what like a regular booking form would be. So you just like pick a slot here, right? Like you'd say like, I'm going on 11 a.m. and then you enter your name, your surname, and your email address. Something like that. You can have as many fields as you want. You can gather as much data as you want, right? And then finally, you post a notification in Slack. Slack is pretty simple. You create your Slack account, and usually you're left with something like this. And you can create, and you can add channels to your Slack account. So for this one, I added a clients channel, I don't want to go into the details of how you sign up for Slack and create a channel. It's fairly straightforward. I'll only go into the details of some of these stuff when we're looking at how to integrate them in an automation kind of purview, just so this video doesn't end up being painfully long. A lot of this stuff, there's content out there on YouTube. How to set up Slack, how to set up Trello, how to set up your Google Calendar appointment schedule, all of that. In this case, we're just looking at how you can bring these tools together and orchestrate them to create a seamless onboarding experience for your client. So you create a new channel called Clients, and maybe this is where you post, and you can add members to this channel, and this is where you post every time you have a new client, something like that, right? There's one bit I forgot, which is like the client is signing a contract and submitting an intake form. Now, for simplicity's sake, I forewent the contract signing part and looked at just the intake form. Why? Because that could open up an entire new episode in its own. Contract management, invoice management, all of that stuff. So let's assume that at this point, the client has already signed the contract to work with your firm. And it's good to have a contract if you're running an agency or a consultation firm or something like that, just to make sure everything is spelled out correctly. And then let's say you give them an intake form, and there's where you capture the data. So for that, I would use Tally. There's so many form builders out there, and all of them are pretty great, really. I just chose Tally because I'm a bit familiar with it, and it's very easy to use. So like we have Tally here, you go sign up for Tally, and then maybe you create a new form. You just click on the new form button right there, and you have like form title. And with Tally, you can just press enter, and there you can like add blocks, all sorts of blocks. There's so many different things here. I'm not gonna do this because I already created a form. In my case, it's an onboarding form, and I'm just gonna show you what it looks like. But it has a name field, a company field, and an email field, right? You can actually see if I go to edit right here, that you basically click on a plus, because that's what I did. Before I started, this thing was entirely black. You click on a plus, you add the title and the thing. Like, for example, if I say, hey, let me click on a plus here, and I want a short answer, and then I want to insert that. Well, it's going to come under name, really. So you kind of want it under something else. I don't know why this has two name fields. So I'm just going to do that, and then click on a plus down here and say short answer, and then insert. Now you can see it has a new field, and you can type in like, what is this for, honestly, because I'm just doing it for a demo. And then, you know, inside, if you click on these, like, what do we call them? A handlebar or something. You can have settings like whether the field is required or not, what the default answer would be. You can add conditional logic. Tally is just, it's a rabbit hole. You can learn and do so much about it. But I decided to go for the simplest version, which is just having the name of the person, the company, the email, and the project type. And for the project type, it's a drop down. You can see here that it's actually a drop down. And if you go to the turn into thing, so like if I were to say maybe pick a new one afterwards and say that I want a drop down, that's the option I would pick, right? And I picked that they're either a consultation client or a development client. And you know, if you can also add a thank you page. So the idea would be like if I was somewhere like here and I don't know, added something here, and then you type / thank you, you can see that you can pick a thank you page, and you can decide what goes into the thank you page. So that's how I created it. But now for my thank you page, I just said thank you for sharing your info. We'll send you an onboarding list, an onboarding email in a bit. So that's the idea. And then you hit publish, and your form is ready, right? Great. And when you come back to your form, where is it? Onboarding form. You can click on share, and you can copy the form link and share it with your client as much as you want. The interesting thing, the very interesting thing, is that there's also an integrations tab where you can try different types of integrations. As you can see, Tally integrates with lots of different apps, but my favorite is the Webhook. Anyway, we're going to get to that when we get to the automation bit. The Webhook is what makes the n8n workflow work so that you can actually automate the whole process. But let's try to recap. So the client fills in a Tally form, right? And then you create client folders in Google Drive, right? And then you create a project in Trello. You can see how all of these tools are coming together, right? That's going to define how the work will be done. And then you send a personalized welcome email via Gmail or Outlook or whatever you use. In this case, it's Gmail. And while you're doing all of this, you have a Google Calendar appointment schedule set up in the Google Calendar app, right? And then you post a notification in Slack. How many tools are those? Tally, Google Drive, Trello, Google Calendar, Gmail, and Slack. That's 6 tools. If you are doing this manually, you're going to be switching tabs a lot of times. You're going to be typing a lot of times. You're going to be clicking on your mouse a lot of times. And there's nothing wrong with that. Work feeds the soul. I'm a fan. Ask me any day. But if you could automate all of this decently, for example, using AI to send that welcome email for you, then you would have your time to focus on higher level stuff in the business, and it would make things move faster. So the client doesn't have to wait a long time after they fill in that onboarding form before they get their welcome email, okay? So how would we do that? Well, first, you can see that once we have the steps clearly lined up, you start with the rough idea and then you flesh it out, right? Once you have the steps clearly lined up, then we know that all we have to do is go and automate these one by one. You get it? And that's where a tool like n8n comes in. So first you create the system, and then once you have the steps and the components of the system properly set up, then you can automate it. And sure enough, I did make an automation that does exactly this. I'm going to walk you through it, and especially talk about like some of the integrations. Some of them are fairly complex, especially credentials. But I will share this workflow template with you guys so you can try it out on your own or expand on it, right? Anyway, the first step is really to create that tally form that I told you about. So say you create the tally form and it's okay. You know what kind of information you want to get. The next step will be to go to integrations and set up a webhook. You can see here that I already have a webhook set up, but like if I were to, for example, delete this, I could then come back here and just go to connect webhook. And a webhook is really, it's a kind of tool that says that when something is done, if you give me an address, a URL in this case, I will send a notification that the thing is done. It's a notification system, but for systems. What am I saying? It's a notification system, but for applications. So instead of getting like a message in your phone, your application gets a message, or whatever you built in the back and gets a message like, this thing is done and here's some information regarding the thing that just got done. You do whatever you want with it, right? And the way you start with a webhook is that if you have like an n8n workflow, your first trigger node will be a webhook. In this case, I've renamed mine on Tally form submission. But you can see that if I click on add here and then I go to maybe triggers, I have on webhook call right here, right? And it just works like that, where you can choose the HTTP method. Most webhooks out there, like for example on Tally, on API, and a lot of systems expect you to have a post as your HTTP method because they're going to be posting to your webhook. Don't worry about HTTP methods and what they mean. Just for this particular instance, know that a post is what you're going to most likely get when you're dealing with webhooks and integrating things with n8n. And they give you like a URL. So we have a test URL, which is what you're going to use before you activate the workflow and it's in production. And you're going to have a production URL, which is what you're going to have after you activate the workflow. So in this case, I just use the test URL because I was testing the workflow. If I was going to production, I would have the production URL. Anyway, what does this all mean? It means that if you click on this, you get to copy the webhook. Sorry, that's my MacBook. When I click on it, too deep. It highlights stuff. Anyway, so you just click and it's just telling me URL copied. Stop doing that. But okay, so you just click on that, and then you would come back to your tally form right here, and you would paste that. Okay. Now, because I'd already built a webhook, I'm not actually going to paste that particular link. I'm going to paste the one that I'd built earlier, the webhook I'd added earlier. I'm going to put it in there, right? And then I'm going to connect. And there we have it. We have a webhook. This is what I initially had, okay? And what it says is that once that person fills in a form, it's going to give you some data. In this case, let's say I actually unpin this data right here. Click on that, and now it's unpinned. And I want this webhook to listen. So I click on listen for test event. And we're gonna run this workflow together, right? So it's waiting for a trigger event. And I come back here and I'm like, this is my form. So I go to the share tab, I click on that URL, and then, well, I actually already had it. And I say I'm gonna fill this in. So let's say I'm gonna fill in the name as Rick Sanchez, and the company is Rick Motion. That's funny. And the email, because I can't make up an email on the spot, is just gonna be my regular email. And the project type is that this guy wanted a consultation. It's just that, right? Now let me just check if it's still listening. Yes, it is. And if I hit submit, boom, it's supposed to show up here. You can see that the webhook got my message, right? So we have that message, and you can see that it's showing here that I got, it has a lot of data, but if you look at the body, you can see under fields that under name, it got my name, Rick Sanchez. Under company, it got Rick Motion. And under key, it got, under email, it got my email. And under project type, it returns something like a value, which is like an alphanumeric string. But then it does have an options array which matches each alphanumeric string, like the ID, to the type of project. So that's how tally works. It matches, it has like an alphanumeric string representing the ID of the option that was picked. And then there's an array showing what each ID, what option each ID corresponds to. We'll get to that. This could change. If you're not using tally, using something else, could be something entirely different. That's not the point. These are these are the trees. We're looking at the forest here, which is that you're organizing this thing. We will touch on the trees briefly here and there, but I want you to understand the system itself, right? And then the next step we know was about creating a client folder, right? And we know we need to create a folder with a naming convention of company name and project type. And then in that folder, we're going to create subfolders: contracts, invoices, deliverables, and client assets, right? So we go there and we have a drive folder, a drive node. So if I go to drive, Google Drive, we have a create folder action here. So that's what this is. As you can see, I renamed it to create client folder. And you can see here that you need to set up your credentials. I'm not going to go into how to set up your Google Drive credentials. It involves Google Cloud, but I will include a link to the documentation on n8n for how to set up your Google Cloud. I've touched on this countless times in previous videos. Feel free to watch them and get an idea of, and also read the docs and get an idea of how to set these up. But once you set up your credentials, you need to set up the folder name. So we said it's the client name or the company name and the project type. So the company name is pretty simple. You just go to your webhook right here, and you're going to change this into an expression using this button. And you're going to pick from, where is this? So, this is the webhook call on tally form submission. Yeah. So you go to the fields and you can see that the company name is right here, and it's Rick Motion, right? So you just drag Rick Motion, which is this value, right in here. So it would be, something like that. Now it says Rick Motion consultation, which I'm gonna delete so it says it correctly, but you get the idea. But what about the project's type? In this case, I told you, if you look at the project type, the value is actually an alphanumeric ID. And then there's an options array that shows you how to match IDs, or matches each ID to whatever option. Now for this one, If you're a programmer, you would know about the find function in JavaScript, which is what expressions use in n8n. If you're not, then you would know about Gemini or ChatGPT, which can help you come up with this expression. So if I went to like, if I went to Gemini and I asked it like, hey, could you help me? And I literally sometimes I just take a screenshot. That's literally what I do. I take a screenshot. I don't know if I can do this in Gemini right now, but I can show you, like, for example, if I go to a new chat here and I take a screenshot of this, let's pretend for a minute that I don't have this. Okay, I'm just gonna copy it or something and then delete that, and now I have this, and there's a project type. I just do a screenshot like that, save to clipboard, and then go to Gemini and paste it, and like, hey, I need an expression that takes gives the project type, the data from the previous node gives the value of the option as an ID, and then there's an options array that matches IDs to what? To option name. This is in n8n, by the way. Help me make an expression. Something that simple, right? Let's see what Gemini comes with. I mean, you could use ChatGPT too. I just tend to like using Gemini sometimes. You could use Claude as well, right? Okay. Yeah, and so what do we have? Of course, I love how Gemini is so affirming when it gives responses. Of course, you need an expression that finds the correct field, blah, 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 blah. Hard coding the fields one is risky because the order of fields might change. Much more reliable ways to find the field by its unique key, etc., etc. I mean, sure, I could have a code node, but like in this particular instance, actually, I've done this before. You can use an expression, and Gemini is right, in as much as AI isn't always right. But in this case, because my workflow is already like that, I just want the particular field, the particular expression for my node right here. I just want the expression, please. Let's see what it comes up with. Yeah, right. So it has data.fields.find blah blah equals, okay. Yeah, you're gonna experience a lot of this with AI. So I know that this has nothing to do with that. So I'm just gonna like show it. In this case, again, this is how you work with AI to give you things. And I really want to walk you through this so you can also use AI for your own vibe coding or vibe automating thing. So look at the value field. Which value field are we looking at? It's this one right here, the value 0 field. The value 0 field. That's the ID of the option that was picked. And the options array, that would be this array of options, matches IDs to text, to the actual option names. I want an expression that takes that ID and matches it to the correct option. Please. Please. I said please. Let's see what it comes up with. Let's see. It's telling us that it's doing stuff, I guess. You can actually see the thought process. Literally. Okay, it's still giving me JavaScript. So note that I need an expression for the expression tab, because what are we looking at? This isn't a code node. So that's like something you would know if you've worked with n8n before, is that some of the expressions that work in like code that works in a code node won't work in an expression node. Like where you're giving variables and stuff, etc., etc. Actually, I can see low key, after key question, blah blah. It's giving the wrong value, etc., etc. But like really, what you really want is something like this. Okay. Just a very simple, it's called an arrow function. Well, yes, you can work with AI, but you do need some knowledge of programming. That's the final conclusion here. And the reason why this isn't working is data.fields.find. It says undefined. So again, you go back, take a screenshot, and you go back to Gemini. It's a back and forth. It's not working, returning undefined. Also, what is f.key? Let's see. So we're going to fields.find, right? So what we're looking at is not the key, but the value. So it's looking at this. It's looking at the key. But really what I want is the value, right? Also, I'm not looking at the key, but the value, which in this case is, let's see if we can find it. It's this alphanumeric string. And we're just gonna have that there. And just to give it even more context, and this is part of what helps you work with AI very well, is you go down there and you take a screenshot of that very specific section so it knows what it's doing. I hope it works this time. Certainly worked easily the first time I did it, but maybe that's because the previous chat that I had a lot more context. Context really matters, by the way. Let's see what it comes up with. Yep, it's doing its thing. Okay, anytime before Christmas. Let's see. It'd be so funny if this episode was posted at Christmas. Wow. Okay. This is hallucinating. Now, I'm going to show you something else I do. You're hallucinating. I literally tell you what it's doing. And then if you want to like get the specific thing, you can just like get all of that and then say workflow JSON. Like that. I do that so it knows where the JSON for the workflow goes. And I'll be like, I've copied the workflow. I'm naming the project as the name as the company name plus project type, but can't get project type directly. I'm looking for an expression, not code for the code node, to append, and I'll just show it like a screenshot of where I'm trying to do that. Right here, you know, and just show it that. Right? Give it as much context as it needs. To append to create that name. Just give me an expression. Let's see if it does it better this time with a little more context. and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. And it's still giving us code. Wow. You're still giving me code for the code node. Give me a one-line expression. You could ideally figure this out if you're a programmer, but I'm assuming you're not, or at least not entirely. So I'm showing you how you would fight with AI to help you figure this out. This is both a way to use AI and commentary on the limits of using AI. Finally. But now I'm not looking for the key. So instead of f.key, I want it to look at the value. Where is that? F value. Value, yeah. Let's see. And it's gonna take a lot of different attempts. Let's see, line expression. Dot options. Oh yeah, I see what it's doing. Now it works. What do you know? We found it after so much. But yeah, so anyway, I'm just telling you can use AI to build it. You may or may not get different mileage depending on how much experience you already have, but that's one way to look at it. Anyway, I'm going to share the workflow JSON for this so you can kind of like use the code yourself. And this is not like the previous code that I had, but it works, right? And then you create a client folder, right? Now we've created a client folder. We've created a client folder in here, in the client's thing right here. If you go to clients, you can see that now we have a new client folder for Rick Motion consultation, right? Rick Motion, right? And then now we're going to set permissions. Remember, after you create the folder in Google Drive, permissions are not automatic. This is one of those like little nitty-gritties. You won't see it here in the main workflow where you're just like creating the assets. But as you're working, you'll realize that when you create a folder, it's not automatically shared with people. So you need to share it, right? You need to give sharing permissions. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm basically going to Drive, like this is just like a Drive node. If you go to Drive and you click on this, you can see that there is share a folder, something like that right here. That's what I'm using. And then I renamed it. Always name your nodes relevantly so other people can read. And you have like the folder, and then what do? You can actually, the specific folder, you can use the ID of the folder, which comes back in the response once you create the folder. And you can have the role, so you just click on permissions, right? If we had this, I'm just gonna like copy this real quick so we can get rid of it. But like, let's say if you just had this, you would basically add a permission, select a role, which is commenter, and then the type could be a user, and then you'd add the email. Now the email in this case, I'm just getting from the tally form. It's right here, the user's email right there, and you just drag that in there, and again, it works. So you share just like that. Then you use the Google Create folder thing again, but now you're creating the subfolders, the contracts, invoices, etc. Right? That's what these other nodes do. So in this case, the parent folder can be searched by ID in this case, and the ID you get from where you initially created the folder, just like that. And it's pretty much the same for contracts, invoices, and deliverables, and assets. So I'm just gonna like run through all of them at once so you can see them all being created. And there we go. Now you can see that if I click in here and I just like do this, I now have all 4 folders automatically created. This is supposed to be running in a very short amount of time right now. It's just that I'm walking you through the workflow. This is stuff that you would have been doing manually. Then what about creating a project board in Trello? Well, you could use the Trello node, and this is where the fun starts, but the Trello node does not allow you to create a board using a template. Are we good? It does not allow you to create a Trello node using a board using a template. So for example, in Trello, if I want to create a board right here, like this is showing me this, and I want to create a board using this template. So if I go to, I don't know, like I want to create a board using the template, what you do is, for example, you need to send an API request, and you can see that in the Trello documentation. So for creating a board right here, there's a request. You send a post request to this particular URL, and then you need to include an API key and a token. That's where things get interesting and complicated. There's documentation on n8n for how to create an API key. So I'm assuming you've had the API key and token already set up. But, you know, just to give you a quick overview, the idea is that you would go, don't worry if you saw my secrets, I don't mind. I'm going to delete this afterwards. You would go to Trello.com, assuming you've already created a Trello account, Trello.com/powerups/admin. And then this would allow you to create a power up. You need to create a power up, which is like an application within Trello. So in Google, in some other apps, they call it create an application, and then you have like a client ID and a client secret. In other places, it's, I don't know, it's all sorts of things, but it's kind of the same concept. It's not quite OAuth 2 as, you know, a lot of apps use. It's more like OAuth 1, which is something we'll get into some other time. But the idea is you create a power up, right? So you can come here and say, I want a new power up. And then you would add some information like the name of the power up, which workspace it's going to, your email address, and a support email address that users can use to get to you, the name of the author. You can leave the iframe connector URL blank if you're working with n8n. This is for if you're kind of like embedding Trello into an actual application. And then once you're done, you should have a power up created. And in that power up, if you go to API key, you should see your API key and a secret. And then if you want to token, you just click on this token button. And when you come here, right, and you say that you want to allow, right, it's going to create a token. And now what you're going to do is you're going to come back to Trello, right? To n8n, and you're going to do an HTTP request. It's going to be a post request. It's going to go to this particular URL. And then, as you can see here in the documentation, the way it looks like right here, wish I could expand this, but like you send, and then you have a query string with the name that you're going to give the board, the API key under the key, and the token under API token, right? So the API key comes from here in your power up. The token comes from here. So instead of like hard coding that, because you do have the option to send query parameters, which I would only advise for sending some of this other stuff. What you do need to do is instead go choose a generic credential type, custom auth, and then create the custom auth. So if I go to the thing here, you can see that in the custom auth, what you do is you create like a JSON, right? And in that JSON, you have the query string in there, and it has that, and then the key, which has your API key, and a token key, which has your token, which again, I'm gonna delete after this. And then you save that, and now you know your tokens, your credentials are going to be sent. At least they don't have to appear in the because like in the actual request, it's behind the scenes, yeah, sure, and like a really determined hacker could packet sniff or whatever, but like at the very least, it's not going to appear in your workflow, okay? And then you can add query parameters like the name of the board. In this case, we just choose the same naming convention as we did when we were creating the client folder. So I just like drag the name here, which is a company name followed by project type. And then you have like a few other things. So if you are trying to create from a template, what you do after you have a template, like let's say for example right now, if I'm going and I have the simple project board here, right? What I do is, if I want to know what the ID for this template is, I would just come to the URL and add a .json. And that's going to show me this very ugly text. But if I click on pretty print, it's going to make it look ordered. And the ID that comes up here, that's the ID of the template, right? And so what the value for that is going to be the ID board source. And that's where you add the template, right? You can see that literally here in the docs, the ID board source. Where is it? This is the ID of a board to copy into the new board, okay? And a bit more, the ID organization. So this tells it which workspace to take it into. And you can find it here. So if you come in here and you do like a command F and you say ID board organization, ID organization, you can literally see it right there. It's in the JSON, okay? And that's what you would copy paste into here, because this is the organization for your Trello workspace. You can actually see it right here. If you come here, you can see that I only have one workspace. So whatever workspace you're using, right? And then you have a keep from source key, which just says cards. So basically it's saying that if I have like this thing, please add all the cards that I have in my original board into the thing, right? So it's going to automatically add those. And then you can have like a description where you can add the name, the company, etc., the email, and all of these I'm picking from the tally form submission. All of this, which is dragging and dropping. Where's the name? Yeah, this is the name, Rick Sanchez. The value, Rick Morsham. Company name, this email right there. I just drag and drop them, right? So you always have to make sure you're in expression mode. And this forms a bulk of your API request. Now, if I hit execute, we're going to have that happen. And if I come back to Trello just randomly here, I can see that I should have Rick Morsham consultation, and it's using the exact same template. Can you see that? How cool is that? Right? Should we go on? Are we good? It stopped again. Okay, let me just stop. Right, and we've created a board in Trello. So again, this is an HTTP node. And if you want me to create a special video about like how to set up Trello, there's so much you can go into if you go into credentials for different applications. And I can create like specialized videos for setting up credentials for different things, especially if you're doing like a raw HTTP request. But anyway, the point here is to work out how to put these things together. Then we have like a variables node that, again, just to go back to where we were, now we are sending a personalized welcome email, right? So we have a personalized welcome email, and we are going to include some information in there. So in this case, we need to give the AI the name of the client, the email of the client, the name of the company, and the URL for their folder, and maybe a Google Calendar link. Presumably at this point, you already created an appointment thing, and so you can just get the link for that. How do you get that? Well, there's a copy link here if you click on your Google Calendar appointment scheduling. And let's see, so we set some variables and we have that stuff, and then we have the AI agent. And you can see the prompt is fairly simple. It's like, you're a friendly but professional onboarding assistant. Write a welcome email to a new client named, and then gives the name of the client. And you tell it that our company name is AceMe Consulting, so that should be what we're welcoming them to as a client. Mention that their shared Google Drive is blah, blah, and we tell it to output a subject for the email and a body, and we give it like an example format. I always like formatting responses. So when I come back here, I'm gonna have require specific output format. Is it working? And then you can add a model. In this case, I always use OpenRouter because it gives me access to so many models, but I'm using GPT-4o, and a structured output parser where you give it an example of the kind of format you want from it. Again, if you want me to go deep dive into these things, that's fine. Let me know in the comments. Today, we're looking at the business process, not the technicalities of setting it up. Anyway, so I execute this and it writes the welcome email. And we have the welcome email. And you can see here the subject is welcome to ASME Consulting and a bunch of text. So you go to the Gmail send email node. That would be Gmail. Where is that? Send a message. That would be the one, right? And for the two, you just drag the email from the set variables right here, the client email. You can actually just do it as that. I think it's the same thing anyway. And then the subject will come from the AI agent, and the email text will also come from the AI agent, the body. And if you execute that, it should send out an email. And if I check my email right now, let me just see. Welcome to ASME Consulting, Rick. And it has everything in there, right? And I can even book a calendar, an appointment right here. You can see it's not going to show me like all the open slots. And then finally notify the team on Slack. So for this, again, assuming you've set up Slack, I'm not going to go into Slack credentials because this video is already long. But if you want me to go into how to set up Slack credentials, it's pretty simple. You create an app, get the client ID, get the client secret. I will share the docs for that though. But anyway, if you go and click on Slack, the Slack node should allow you to do this, because what you are doing is sending a message. And you can see here that when you're sending a message, you can choose the channel. So you send a message to a channel or your user. So you select channel, and then you choose the client's channel, and there you have the message text, which is just basically pulling in the variables from the email agent, the company name and project type, etc., etc. If I do that, it should be okay. If I go to Slack, I should be seeing a new Slack message. I know this workflow, there are bits of it you're like, I don't know how to set that up, and that's okay. I'm going to share the workflow JSON, and please let me know in the comments if there were any specific nodes that bothered you as far as setup was concerned. But the real point that I was trying to get across is how you can have like a simple process in your business that you can then break down and systemize and then automate, right? So that you don't have to do it manually, and use AI as well as tools like n8n. And you could do this even with Agent Builder from OpenAI. And maybe I might make a video about that soon. And then automate so that you have it all working and you can focus on higher level things. Now, if you would like, let me know if you have like any particular huge pain points that your business is following, and any processes that you find hard to manually automate, and maybe that might give me an idea for my next video, and then we can work on that. But the point here is to just like help business owners understand how to break down the processes in their businesses, systemize them, and then automate that. Otherwise, if you like what we're doing here, you can also contact me. We also offer consultations, AI and automation consultation, and we would be glad to help you with your next business problem. I'm not going to waste too much of your time. It's been over an hour. Until next time, ciao Bella. Bye-bye.